for this Founders Talk. I'm really excited to kick this off.
Likewise.
So tell me, what's the Venturator and what prompted you to start it?
My journey with the Venturator started with an online media portal. What we used to do is interview hundreds of entrepreneurs, understand their business challenges, their business hurdles. And that sort of introduced me to the startup ecosystem in India. And as I navigated through, this promising yet very early VC and startup ecosystem in India, I realized that there are a lot of promises, but there are some very obvious gaps, such as lack of good mentors, lack of good quality capital, lack of right resources. So what I started the Venturator with was a very small idea, which is to help early stage startups and entrepreneurs connect to the right ecosystem enablers, whether it's mentors, investors, so on and so forth, like literally everybody in the ecosystem that you need to take your idea to implementation is the network we wanted to bring online.
How did you build the MVP?
In terms of the MVP, we did not have a lot of investment tech-wise. Ours is a more skill-heavy and ops-heavy business. From a financial standpoint, it was an easier thing to do.
I want to ask you about the mistakes you did.
During my journey?
Top 3 mistakes.
There's so many mistakes, it's difficult to categorize them as top 3. But I think one of the early mistakes I did, and literally I can just think so many, but you commit equity too quickly to whoever's coming in as a mentor or the first person who's investing. And I did that too, and I sort of have to restart the company. So a lot of legal hassles that I went through. Somebody who's willing to do your tech and he's asking for 30-40% of the company, and because you literally have nothing except for the equity, you tend to not value your equity too much. I think don't do that, because in the longer run you get judged by VCs by diluting how much equity can you dilute, how good you are at negotiating. It talks a lot about how much faith you have in your own company. It speaks so much about these things than just having a partner on board or a mentor on board. Evaluate people for every percentage of the equity that you're giving in the company, because it's really going to come back and bite you in the long run. The other mistake is hiring too soon. Sometimes you hire people for passion because they're really excited to come in. What is very important to build your first team is have everyone being able to contribute to the revenue, because you like a team that's passionate and that also sort of keep you going. But it's very important to have people who are skilled enough to scale this business. Otherwise, passion alone does not take you too far.
Are you listening to some podcasts, or like what online content are you following?
So I try to cut myself off the noise, because I'm very selective about the kind of content we consume. There is a lot of gung-ho about being an entrepreneur, a lot of, hoopla around doing the startup. I think it's also a worrisome journey. It's a very lonely journey. It's a journey that, has a lot of lows and very few highs, but the lows make the highs worth it. So while I'm all for celebrating those highs, I think when we look at the media talking about, guys raising money and somebody doing this and somebody doing that, we condition ourselves to believe that that is what a startup journey is. I think it's a lot more than that. So it's necessary not to put ourselves on the same pedestal in a comparative sense with all this content that's floating around. And the thing about us being a disruptor is being unique. And you can only be unique if you stop copying what everybody else is doing. So I'm very conscious about the kind of content I, take in. I like AngelList founder, Naval Ravikant. I really like the kind of stuff he says. I think there is a lot of symbiosis between life in general on a philosophical term and doing a startup. So I like content around that, which is, more broad. In terms of very specific content to my industry, as in sectors that are trending, not trending, etc., I keep myself very limited to maybe PitchBook or a couple of these websites. But I'm not every day consuming a lot of data on this, because it blows your mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have some communities of founders or like entrepreneurs that you're a part of, like even if it's online or offline?
Yeah, so the Venturator itself is a community, so I'm definitely a part of that. I used to be a part of Global Shapers, which is a World Economic Forum, sort of arm, and they had a lot of these entrepreneurs with them. It's there are a lot of meetups, etc., that you can kind of attend. But
Are you attending?
so I used to for a while, but then sort of kind of gets repetitive, and you find your arc, right? You find your people, and then you kind of want to focus on what you're doing versus just doing a lot of networking.
So what's the end game for all this entrepreneurship journey?
So I read this line just today, and I'm glad you asked because I can use it now. It's great to have a life where you build something that lasts longer than you do. And I think with the Venturator, the amount of impact we have had on just small ideas, people with passion, just walking out of college, to be able to handhold them, to be able to structure, their myriad of thoughts and emotions into a presentation, to be able to give them a nudge when they're feeling low, that empathy and the gratitude that we get in return for all of this. Besides, of course we make our money, but just the thank you in that email it just goes about to mean so much. And then when you see some of these companies grow into bigger companies, and you find people using them and talking about them, and you feel that you were part of such unique journey, and you got that opportunity so early, and that itself is a huge high. So we want to grow further in this journey and see how many more ways can we impact consumer tech in a bottom-up economy, and change the way millennials and the next generation is living.